already, because he's actually visited with us twice this year, and has been one of the most engaging and charismatic and informative speakers that we've ever had. His past background has been as a clinical psychologist, and also as a consultant, but recently he made a huge splash in the secular community with his book, The God Virus. His presentation to us was incredible, and I've already been able to take the information from that and apply it as I'm looking at other religions and putting them in categories that are able to be able to understand them. He's spoken about the God Virus throughout the country and even internationally in Ireland, recently escaping penalty under the blasphemy law there. And he's done some great work. Today he's going to be talking about sex and secularism. What happens to your sex life when you leave religion? We've been able to answer that because he did the world's largest survey on sex and secularism with our own Amanda Brown, a member of SOMA and director of member recruitment for 2011. Without further delay, I introduce you to Darrel. Please give him a round of applause.
Should be.
Hello? Oh, right. There we go. Well, good. Thanks, comrade. We're going to talk about sex and secularism today, but first of all, I just want to say thanks a lot to Amanda for her help. Stand up. Everybody gets a seat. She's helped me a hell of a lot on this survey. We're going to get to see. And for the hot graphics we've got here, we can thank her husband back there, Adam. He's awesome. He did that in like 15 minutes. And check out their atheistresource is .org or .com? Check that. It's got all sorts of resources for we who are leaving religion or need to understand what our own movement's all about. And of course, thanks to Conrad and all these tremendous volunteers that have done all this work to put this together, and for Joey Ralph, who's led the organization for the last year or so as the president. And to SOMA, I've had a lot of fun talking to these folks. You guys are fun to come and talk to, and they're very challenging. We had a good time afterwards, of course, always. So, also, I'd like just to highlight something that's totally unrelated to my talk, but while I've got your early attention, we and me and a number of other people started an organization called Recovering from Religion. There are lots of groups out there that will help you get into religion. There's only one group that will help you get out. If you're interested in starting a group in your area, or if you know someone somewhere else that wants to start a group, have them get a hold of me. We've got propaganda, information in the room in there. Just pick it up and feel free. It's got my email on it. Call me, email me, whatever. We've got 25 groups all over the United States of people who meet to talk about the problems of dealing with in-laws who are religious, or a wife or a spouse who's religious, or children. I mean, there's all sorts of problems that people encounter when they leave religion, and there's nobody out there to talk to them. And even atheist groups, they don't really want to know because they've gotten out of it years ago. They're ready to move on. New people need a place to go. So that's one of them. Our objective today is to do an overview of our recent research that Amanda and I did on sex after religion, and we're going to explore a little bit on the implications of this for your life, some of the research and what it tells us. I do want to put a disclaimer up here, though. If you are religious, parts of this talk may offend you, but I'm here to talk to secularists, so just let that slide off your back if you're too religious about this stuff. Now, it was the National Day of Prayer recently, so I thought it would be very important for me to give a prayer. So, would you all bow your heads and follow along with me? Dear Flying Spaghetti Monster, we thank you for giving us sex and sexuality, whether homo or heterosexual, whether bi or trans, and for not making us like those uptight Baptists, Christians, Mormons, and Mennonites. Thank you for the wonderful masturbatory fantasies and for the pornography upon which many of them are based. Flying Spaghetti Monster, we ask that you grant us sex partners and lovers, wives and husbands that know where our G-spots, our clitoris, and that sweet spot on our penis is. Grant us long, loving foreplay with deep, wet kisses followed by huge orgasms and loving cuddles afterwards. Grant us the courage and the wisdom to communicate openly and honestly with our partners, and give them more pleasure than we receive, for we know it is far better to give than to receive. Your newliness, we do not need 72 virgins. In fact, we ask that you send no virgins, because we don't want to have to train them. Unless, of course, they're very willing to be trained. We especially plead today that you may not send any repressed Christian virgins, male or female, for they will only feel guilty afterwards because of their abstinence-only training. Your posthumous, we ask that you give us the wisdom to understand and appreciate our partner's kinks or lack thereof. Whether foot worshiping or spanking, ropes or talking dirty, help us to appreciate their full sexuality and lead us not into temptation of judgment and scorn for others when their sexual preferences are not our own. We do ask in the name of Roman for retribution, shame and scorn on pedophile priests, hypocritical ministers sleeping with their choir directors, and gay-bashing closeted ministers. Oh, Spaghetti-O, we ask that you send condoms in abundance and your blessing to the many dedicated workers at the Trojan Condom Factory and Planned Parenthood. In the name of Dan Savage and Greta Christina, we pray, for these are the true gods and goddesses of the secular world. All right, amen. Say amen. Amen. I have a question for you. Please try to answer honestly. How many of you masturbate? All right. Can you even imagine asking that question in a Baptist church? In a Mormon church? No, it's not going to happen. Their religions teach that masturbation is going to send you straight to hell. Catholic priests are told, you better get to confession immediately afterwards or you're going to go straight to somewhere you don't want to go. So a huge amount of guilt is put around the whole idea of masturbation. And yet we know every single primate on the face of the earth masturbates, including us. And they do it a hell of a lot. All you have to do is go to the zoo and watch the chimps or the bonobos. And they're always doing it. How many of you had premarital sex or have no problems with premarital sex? All right, there you go. How many hands do you think we can get in a Baptist church? Now, how many of them had premarital sex, though? Yeah. 95% of Americans have had premarital sex. 95%. You know, the 5% that didn't are all Baptist ministers. Go figure. All right. Does your God watch you while you're having sex? Is he a voyeur? I think most of the Christian gods, Muslim gods, all those gods are voyeuristic. They're watching you, and it makes people feel guilty. So they're too busy focusing on what does God think about this particular act. You know, and there's some acts that will send you straight to hell. I have noticed that atheists don't seem to have problems with this. Atheists raise their hand when I say you masturbate. Have you had premarital sex? Yeah, they don't have problems with this. So Amanda and I wanted to understand what happens to people's sex lives when they leave religion. Because many of you were probably religious. How many of you were religious before? Well, look at that, like 80%. When you're religious, you weren't raising your hand. I'm betting. Because everybody else around you said, oh no, I don't want to admit to that. Because the minister said you're going to hell if you do it. So our section Secularism survey was based on that. We had 14,500 people start the survey and almost 10,000 completed it. And it has 69 questions. Now, Amanda called me late one night and said, Darrel, do you realize we have 69 questions on this? I said, no, I didn't. It was accidental, right? We did not make it. But it's fitting. I would agree. All right, so we have 6 hypotheses that we were testing. First, religion's use of sexual guilt is measurably greater in conservative religions than in less liberal ones. People feel the guilt taught by their religion, but sexual behavior shows no difference. In other words, I don't care how religious you are, you're going to behave the same sexually. Religion does not impact sexual behavior. Third, religiously conservative parents are less effective at teaching their children about sex more than secular parents. Children raised in highly religious homes receive poorer sex education. Leaving religion has a positive impact on sexual satisfaction. And 6, religion has continuing negative consequences for individuals after they leave. Now, I have not time enough to talk about all 6 of those hypotheses, but on May 15th, you can find out about them because we are releasing the results. It's a 41-page report with all sorts of colorful graphs, so you can look at everybody else's sex life if you want. We sent this out to a bunch of bloggers to let people know so people would take it, and Amanda called me one night and said, did you think to send this to P.C. Myers? Well, no, I hadn't. And about that time, we had like 4,000 or 5,000 people. I sent an email to P.C. Myers. I think Adam sent an email to P.C. Myers. And next morning, I woke up and it jumped from 4,000 to 10,000 overnight. I'm thinking, what? We got a virus or something. Something's wrong. Then I realized that P.C. Myers had put it up on his website. Some pervert wants to know about your sex life. I recommend you take the survey. So they did. And our numbers doubled overnight just from PC's taking the survey. He told us, and I don't know that I believe him, he said he has very vanilla sex life, or very bland sex life or something. I don't know if he's telling us the truth or not. All right, so let's talk about the survey itself. First of all, who were these people before they became secularists? And a little over 80% of our people said they currently identify as atheists. About 10% didn't give us anything, didn't tell us what they were. And the rest identified as agnostic or secularist or humanist or something like that. So we had a wide range of categories, but a little over 80% said they were. But what were they before they became a secularist? And we can see here that 19.7% were Catholic, 14.3% were non-denominational, and you include all the Baptists, which, that's a big bunch of different groups with 6.6%. And there's quite a few religions that we got. We got a lot more that are displayed up here, but we decided not to put any up here that didn't have at least 20 respondents. So like Islam had about 105 respondents, but they were from 20 different countries. So I'm a little suspect about that. And those Islamics that responded were very secular and had been raised very secular. So there's some aspects of this research that you don't want to take too seriously on the former religion. But I think we can take these seriously because they were huge numbers. Thousands of people told us they were Catholic, and thousands said they were non-denominational. Here's the actual results. About 80%, as I said earlier. The rest report something less or different. In the God virus, I talk about something I call the guilt cycle. How many of you read the God virus? Oh, cool. Wow, we got a lot of people. So in the God virus, I talk about the guilt cycle. It's a psychological tool that religions use to infect you. And I wanted to test this. So Amanda and I tried to put some questions together that would help us understand how is the guilt cycle being used. In simple terms, the guilt cycle simply is, we're going to make you feel guilty about what you already are going to do. You're going to make you feel guilty about masturbation so that you have to come back to us for forgiveness. Have you ever heard of a Mormon going and confessing to a Catholic priest? Have you ever heard of a Catholic confessing to an imam? No. You always come back to the place you learned the guilt. That's the guilt cycle. It's a very effective way of infecting people and keeping them infected. So what we wanted to do is look at how guilt operates. And we found some very interesting results. For example, we asked people, what denomination were you before you became secular? And of course you saw earlier some of those results. But the question was, how would you rate what you were taught, how guilty you felt about sex and its implications on yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Now this to me is one of the most amazing graphs of our whole report. Look at this. Sexual guilt by denomination. We can tell you now, nobody's ever asked this question in the history of the world, as far as I can find. Nobody's asked this question. Now we know that Unitarians have the least sex guilt of anybody. How many of you are Unitarians in here? All right. Congratulations, you won the prize for least sexually uptight of all of us, by the way. You'll notice the Jews, the agnostics, and the atheists are just a little bit above. But we are clearly below the rest of these folks. And look over here.